High personal credit limits are one of the greatest financial accelerators that you can have in your wallet. When it comes to advancing your spending power, your borrowing capacity, and even starting or growing a small business, having high personal credit limits can be the foundation to you having excellent financial metrics across everything else that you're looking to focus on in those various regions of your finances. I want to give some additional context and some specifics around the value of high credit limits. This is going to be a part 2 in the series. I'm going to be covering a secondary response comment for one of my pioneers. I'm going to give you context on who I am, and then I'm going to give you detailed notes that I took down explaining further why high credit card limits can be a great financial foundation and accelerator for your financial goals. So I want you to stick around close to this one and pay close attention and take some notes. The first thing I'm going to do is give you some context on who I am. I'm a career banker by trade. I've been in financial services for over 13 years as a whole. Consumer banking, private client banking, and small business banking. So everything from banking needs to lending needs and cash flow management. I also have an active life insurance license, active mortgage license, active FINRA Series 6 investment license. So I've been all over the financial industry, but again, over 13 years combined in retail banking as a whole. So you're getting this from somebody who not only is advancing their own personal and small business finances actively, but you're getting it from somebody who's a career professional in the field. So I'm gonna read the response comment from my pioneer from the first video that was shot. And then I'm gonna give you a little context on my own notes and responses as to giving you the value of why high credit card limits needs to be a focus for you if you have certain financial goals. So of course, the first thing he states is that he made the thumbnail. Shout out to you for doing so. You had a great question. So I feel it was fitting to make sure that you got some extra attention in this particular series. He goes on from that point to thank me for my explanation. He says that it makes more sense to him now that he caught the first video explaining the value of high limits, especially on the personal side. From that point, he explains, I've also thought there was no point in having high credit limits because I never wanted to be in much debt and it would be a burden to pay them all off. I'm gonna cover that in my response. I have 3 credit cards, 2 have 12K limits, and 1 has a 5K limit. I've never come close to maxing any of them out, but I can definitely imagine situations where I might. It's the business side that intrigues me. And as I'm planning to start my own business in the near future, I think I'll start accepting the offers that I've got to raise my limits. I've always declined those. In the end, what I really need to do is rethink how I use my credit cards as a whole. Absolutely. Rewards, arbitrage, etc. I need to start using my credit cards strategically, like you mentioned. Thanks again, and I'm looking forward to part 2. Part 2, here it is. So I'm going to give you my specific notes, and then I'm going to kind of freestyle the rest of my thoughts around the value of high credit card limits and a response to my pioneer. So all of you watching this video can get some deeper context, because I know there's a lot of hype around high credit card limits, credit cards as a whole, and many of you had the same questions. So I'm going to give you my context and my thoughts, or my finishing thoughts on this topic. So the first thing I want to say is there are a lot of dimensions to this. The first thing I want to speak on is, yes, how you use credit cards is essential to the value of them. You can further interpret the value of having high credit card limits when you understand how to use them effectively. I'm the only source on YouTube that you're going to find that gives the base case for credit card uses, and that's just the truth. The base case is that it's a spending tool, not a debt tool. So this is going to be diving into the fact that you were concerned about going further into debt that you couldn't afford to use those credit cards. Having higher limits is not necessarily use all of them beyond the cash you have to pay them back. High credit card limits have various forms of value that do not demand that you need to spend a lot of money on them all the time to get the benefits from them. No matter the limits you use, you still need to be able to afford to pay them back. So whether it's $2,000 or $20,000, it's very important to make sure what you use on that card, you pay back. Unless you plan to use it for business purposes, which we're going to discuss a little bit further in the video. The second, and maybe tied for the most important point, another major factor you won't hear much of anywhere else is the fact that high credit limits represent something that nobody else is really covering in the finance space. You have to observe how many videos are out there on achieving high credit card limits in the first place. I have dozens of them on this channel alone. What they signify in the fact is that you have to have healthy underlying financials to attain them in the first place. Any banks understand this. You have to at least have reasonable to good finances to get the trust that it takes to get such high credit limits. You also ultimately can use these limits as a badge or a front-facing indicator that you have strong financial position. So what that basically means, when you are getting your credit ran by the credit bureaus or other future banks or lenders, when you're getting your credit ran, it shows it's a great sign that you are low risk and qualified borrower. Having access to other financial institutions' high credit limit basically boils down to other banks in the future looking and saying, I know what it takes to underwrite these credit cards. I'm in the same industry. I have a similar business model. If this bank and financial institution trusted you with this amount of credit limit on a monthly basis, if you have multiple of these banks that have trusted you that are all relatively equal in underwriting and capacity, or at least relatively synonymous, then this is a major indicator that you've shown up as low risk to other financial institutions and continue to be a qualified borrower as we speak. It's a phenomenal financial indicator of where you are with your personal finances before another institution can even dive any further into the information you put in the application that you submitted with them. So this is one of my favorite base cases for achieving high limits. It's the way it looks on your credit report, on top of the actual quality of the credit cards that you have access to as well. No matter how humble most of us portray to be, it definitely can be a show and tell to put a metal Amex card down on the table or a metal Chase card down on the table. The reality of it socially is that we know that most people don't have access to these types of cards. So when you're talking about going into business, you're talking about broadening your financial network or your overall network as a whole. You go to dinners, you go to social events, you have the opportunity to show people your wallet indirectly, completely honestly, from a stable point of view. You're not looking to flash or flaunt or flex. But at the end of the day, you're paying for the tab, you're covering your expenses, you're covering everybody else's at the table's expenses, and your wallet is organized with high quality credit cards from high quality lenders. We all notice the nuances, socially speaking, especially if you're talking about going into business or developing a network to advance your finances or your investment goals. Having a healthy wallet, healthy credit card limits, and healthy credit cards can be a conversation starter. It can be one of those first impression opportunities that is priceless. The next and possibly biggest financial benefit that I consider the mecca because of my personal financial goals and my personal vantage point on growing a small business is going to be having high credit limits on the personal side is a multiplier effect it has on accessing credit and funding for your brand new or existing business. So basically what I'm saying in that situation is, as I referred to at the beginning, you having high credit limits on a personal side, you are the catalyst and the foundational pillar of funding for your small business. You're new or an existing small business, unless your scale is somewhere between 2 to 5 at the ground floor, $1 million in revenue for years, you are going to be a major, actually the predominant financial factor in underwriting for business funding. When you're dealing with business credit cards, it's easy to estimate that somewhere around 70 to 80% of your approval eyes are based on your personal finances. The rest of it is going to be nuances like how your business is set up, etc. But more than 50% for sure, a large part of your financing capabilities on the business side, getting the capital that you need to start or grow a small business, is going to be predicated on your personal finances because of the same things I just mentioned. When lenders are looking at your finances for business funding application, business credit card applications, they again are usually the same institutions that approve you for the personal side. They understand what it takes to get qualified for $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 in limits on the personal side. Good income, good DTI, good payment history, etc. All of the same low risk factors that you're demonstrating to get those personal high limits are what they're going to be looking for behavior-wise on the business side. And this is why it's more than 50% of your application, more than 50% of the underwriting to get business funding. So when you start talking about starting a small business, your cost of capital or your cost per customer, etc. When you're talking about, I'm going to be putting out $5,000 or $10,000 in ads and marketing and materials and equipment in order to grow or start or expand a small business. And this is going to lead to so much in clientele acquisition or so much in revenue, product sales, etc. Now you can equate, if I have 30, 40, 50, 75, $100,000 in capital that I can deploy into my business and I can get a 3, a 5, a 7x return on that capital being deployed based on my estimations or based on previous business transactions, that tells you right there the power of high credit limits on the personal side, as they're going to be the comparable limits you're going to get on the business side. They're going to be the foundation to the underwriting for that business line of credit, etc. That's going to be what gets you equivalent to potentially multiples higher in limits on the business side. And then you can do the math on what you can potentially earn in your small business revenue. This is where the foundation of expanding your legacy financially, growing a legendary small business, growing a community impacting small business, changing the financial well-being for yourself or your family. This is where the foundation gets laid. High credit card limits on the personal side are great. At the time of this recording, the previous video I shot last week, prior to the existence of this storm, I mentioned the emergency circumstances of high credit limits and how, in my case, where I live, a hurricane can come through during hurricane season and push us out anytime from June to November and force us to spend thousands of dollars that we didn't budget for. And having those credit limits can basically give a buffer until I'm able to get reimbursed for through my company or through local or state government benefits on that evacuation, to protect myself and my family, to make sure we can eat, that we can clothe ourselves, that we have shelter, and everything we need to sustain our lifestyles for potentially weeks or further down the line if that storm comes through and create enough damage. And at the time of this recording, of course, July 1st, there's a massive hurricane for the first time on record this early in the storm season that is potentially facing my particular region in Southeast Louisiana to somewhere in Mexico. At the moment, it's too early to tell, but at the time of this recording, my point in case exactly on the personal side of why you need to have emergency cash, but you also need to have the capacity to more effectively spend that cash, which is personal credit cards at high limits. I may look up at the time of this recording, this video dropping July 5th, most likely, this Friday, I may be evacuating days later and have to shack up myself and my immediate family for days to weeks on end, thousands of dollars in food, clothes, and shelter, gas, etc., to survive for a storm that could potentially come through and cause significant, if not catastrophic, damage to my region. And that's exactly what I was talking about. The same applies for an effective spending to an arbitrage in credit cards to get positive returns. You don't get into debt with credit cards. You spend what you can afford to pay off. You get rewards points that help cut off the deficit in the inflated cost of goods and services by getting rewards points and travel perks and better protections to minimize fraud and unauthorized transactions, as well as coverages like insurance and warranties and etc. that come with credit cards when you make purchases on those credit cards that you can't get when you spend cash on those same items. Then when you top it all off and say that this can be the same catalyst to me getting access to very significant levels of funding that can absolutely catapult my small business within weeks, months, or the first couple of years of starting it, the time that businesses collapse the most, for the top reason being access to capital to fund that business until it gives a return on investment. This is the only case that I argue that you put money out that you don't have, which is to take the risk, the calculated risk to grow and start a small business, because that is the backbone of the economics in this country, in this financial system. And personal credit card limits that are high, that you've had for years, is exactly the catalyst and the foundation that will get you the funding you need to accomplish the personal mecca of finances and financial success in this economy, which is being a healthy, productive small business owner. That'll be the fuel you need to start and grow your small business. If you have more questions, comments, thoughts, and feedback on what I covered in this video, if you plan on starting your small business, please comment down below and let me know what your plans are, what help I can provide for you in accessing capital, helping you to structure your personal and business finances and structure your small business entity, the cash flow management aspect on the personal and small business side, to get the foundation that you need to get access to great funding on the business side when you launch that small business. You already have pretty decent positioning on your personal finances and personal credit cards. I can give you the foundation necessary to expand that. So when you go for your first business credit card, when you go to get your business's first funding, that you're in the best position possible. So comment down below, leave your feedback down below, and that's for the pioneer who specifically dropped this comment and launched this conversation, and every single one of you who may fall in this category. If you have more questions about advancing your personal finances and how to use credit cards as a spending tool to get positive arbitrage on your daily spending, the travel perks and rewards, the protections and insurances that come with it, comment that down below. I'd love to give you additional context and feedback as well on that. To all my pioneers, welcome back. To my new viewers, welcome in. Continue to support this channel so this channel can continue to support you. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Other than that, I want each of you to stay focused, stay in motion. I'll see y'all soon.